Hey all, this is insight number 2. The first one was an intro to Romans and literally the epistles themselves, letters from Paul. So go have a look at that one if you want some more information, and check out the Bible dictionary that the Come Me manual does direct you to for information on these books, because it's really good, going to help your understanding a whole lot. And, free, easy to access. All right, so Romans 1 verses 16 to 17. So this is part of Paul's introduction. And this is who I am, and I want to come visit you, and when I come, I want to teach you about some stuff. And here's just here's a warm-up, if you will. Here's a introductory pamphlet or something like that, So he does do that greeting, and then he starts bearing his testimony, which is just lovely. In verse 8, he's like, I want to thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world, because these were people who were already Christian. They had already been baptized to the church, but there were outlying posts of church everywhere, and he can't be everywhere, so he's trying to teach them and go about as best he can. So he's like, the word of your goodness is being spread, and don't you want that to be said of us now, of any church, of any people? Wouldn't you want that, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world? That's awesome. And then in verse 9, for God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayers. He's always praying for you. Do you pray for the entire church membership or the entire Christian community? Probably not. But I would imagine you would pray for large groups of people, and we do that. We also pray for specific people. But isn't it nice to know you're being prayed for? When the prophet says, I've prayed for you all, you're like, oh yeah, okay. But he has. So, be open to feeling that too. The fact that they're going to say, I prayed for you, then they have. And some, today it's, as I said, it's often come off as a kind of a nice thing to say. But if I'm going to say that to you, if I say I'm praying for you or I will pray for you, I mean it, and I will. In fact, I usually do it within the half hour, or as soon as I get back in the car after talking to you or hang up the phone, I'll do it then, so I don't forget. So make sure that it's purposeful and done. Not as a tick box thing, just that I've got life. I'm probably going to forget tomorrow at my regular prayers and then go, oh my gosh, and then I'll remember and I'll go have another quiet one and just make sure that those things are included. So if I say that, I mean it, and I don't want anyone to say that as a disingenuous comment. I'll include it in emails and texts and stuff, and I really do mean it, because I do. And then 11, for I long to see you. So I want to come visit you. I'm trying to get there. Things are holding me up. You want to know about that? Go back to Acts 20. That I may impart unto you some spiritual gift. Because he wants to come and, teach them. That you can be comforted. So then you go to 16 and 17, which is what we're really going to look at here. And that says, so this is, he's talking, first of all in 12, he's talking about Jesus together changes your relationship into something deeper. So he's like, I want to come visit you so that we can talk about Jesus together, because it does change your relationship into something different. When you gather together and do that, it changes how you feel about those people that are with you. If you have a study group that you get together with regularly for Bible study, you're going to feel more comfortable with them, and because you're talking about Jesus together, it works. And then in 16 and 17, he goes on to say, this is part of his bearing his testimony here as an introduction. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. So to the Jews, because that's who you are mostly, but also to everybody else that's there. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. And it's what does that mean to you? So what does it mean for you? It's what does being ashamed of the gospel mean to you? If you're going to be ashamed of the gospel, what does that mean to you? What if you're not ashamed of the gospel? What does that mean to you? How does this look? So sometimes this means hiding your religion and faith. If you're ashamed, you're going to hide your religion and your faith. However, more often, it's simply not living your daily life with Christ in it. So not necessarily that you're hiding it. If someone said to you, do you go to church? You'd say, oh, yeah. But it would end there. You wouldn't be, oh yeah, I do go to church. I go to this church, and we do this, and we do that, and we do that. And sometimes people don't want to hear that, but it's being willing to be able to talk about it and walk with Christ every day. So it's the daily things that happen on a regular or even small, unnewsworthy events and how we act that demonstrate if we are ashamed or shy of having a life with Christ in it. So the things that we do, the way that we behave, the messages we give, and again, remember, over text and email and any electronic message, there's very little context around emotion. And you can read it one way and interpret it very differently. So be very wary of that. And sometimes you fire off a text or a message and you think the other person knows you well enough to understand what you're meaning, but they don't. So be very careful around that. I'm having problems with that lately. So I thought it was good, but apparently it wasn't. And that's kind of me as well. I do that. I just fire it off. But anyway, so you're just having that regular daily thing that you can say, oh, look, I did that wrong. I'm so sorry. Instead of going, oh, you got it wrong. It's like, oh, no, look, I really didn't mean it that way, honestly. So it's just one of the things you can be not ashamed of living the gospel because of how you are. Yeah. So what are some ways that we can show that we're not ashamed? So again, living how you are, like just every day, holding that temper, that Christ-like poise that Elder Bragg talked about in the last conference. Brilliant talk. I love it. It's just how we behave, the things that we do, being someone who exudes the Holy Ghost because they're worthy to carry it with them. There's just so many things in there that can, like, make it better. And just living that every day. And I know the big things, we're probably willing to stand up and say, oh no, I don't want to do that. But even just an everyday life of just letting people know who you are and being kind and Christ-like is not being ashamed of the gospel of Christ because you are trying to be Christ-like. And remembering that you don't need to criticize everyone, and often you don't need to say anything, just don't. There's some really good ways that you can show that you're not ashamed of the gospel. It can be little things. You might wear a little pin that says something like, I love Jesus, or a lot of members of our church wear CTR rings. Personally, I'm not a fan. Not to say that there's anything wrong with them, just personally not a fan. But there's a lot of things you can do that you could easily recognize. Dressing modestly to cover your garments even is one way you can show you're not ashamed of living the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's a simple thing. It's not verbal. It's an action thing. And there's things you can do, like, you all know when you're like on a plane or you're in an airport and you're looking around and you're like, I think they're Christian. Just by the way they are. If they're not Christian, probably Buddhist or something, because they're just that vibe I'm getting off them. And you might ask them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I am. I'm Catholic, and we do that." And you can have a great conversation because you're not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So there's a number of things you can do to identify yourself as that, and to not be ashamed of it. So if you've got any of those that you'd like to share, drop them in the comments because we'd love to hear them. Might give us some ideas on how we can all do that better. About not being ashamed. Paul was openly not ashamed. As we read through Acts, he was bold and brave and unapologetic about preaching Christ. And while we're not required to go out and preach like he did, he certainly lived in a way that also showed he was not ashamed of Christ. And he's saying it right here. I'm not ashamed of it. Not at all. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm living it. And the best way we can do that is with action, also with words, but action and how we are. So that's my thought on that one. Well, what does it mean to you? Let me know. All right. Hang around. We'll get to insight number 3. I'll see you there.